So great to have Father David back with us after the birth of their son, Rowan. Great to have you back. I am so excited to be with you in this little parable, Mark 4. Sometimes after sermons are preached, people will say to preachers, "Oh, I loved it when you said," and they fill in the blank with whatever maybe the feedback might be. You don't all say that. Sometimes it's different, but I loved it when you said it. And I go, I don't really remember saying that very thing, but that's what you heard, and wow, that was really good, and that was really rich. And I've come to learn over the years in preaching God's word that it is indeed the risen Christ walking among his people, with his people, as his words are proclaimed. You'll be surprised at how specific and how rich and how deep, how profound his words will be. That's how powerful they are 2,000 years later. And so we open them before us this morning, just one little small passage. We read two parables. I'm going to focus on one. Just to connect us back to what we looked at last week, since we're in a new series, let me just pick right back up where we left off. Our world is a world that says if you want a name, if you want to make something of yourself, you better hustle. You better hurry. But what Christ says in contrast to that is that if you want a name, if you really want to be somebody whose name can withstand whatever successes or failures this world can throw at you, if you really want a name, then you have to hear my voice calling you out by name. You have to receive that name by grace, not by performance. It's totally opposite than the hurry and hustle and performance-based identity of the world that we live in now. What we're looking at in these three chapters is that Christ is on the move. He is going about this kingdom mission, and he has paused in this moment, and he has invited 12 very ordinary men to become his disciples. He calls them by name, he appoints them, and what is he doing in these three chapters but training them to be his ambassadors in the world, training them, just like he said he would, to become. He's forming them to become different kinds of people. He's training the 12 in this passage. And what is his primary priority that he wants them to experience and to achieve? This is a bit of a quiz from last week. If you're a child and you say Jesus, you're close. It's with him. He is training the apostles to learn the priority of witness, of being with him. See, he called them that they might be with him, and then that he might send them out. So here they are, they're with him. And he's going to describe now what life in his kingdom is really like. In our hurried North Texas culture, you and I, our whole society is so overworked and overbooked. There's so much hurry and hustle. We're just out of sync with God's kingdom and the sacred pace that he invites us into. And in fact, we're longing for that sacred pace, aren't we? We're longing for a more restful rhythm. One of my favorite examples of this is our world's longing for that often comes out as an insatiable appetite for relaxation. We often think that the way to really be restful is to take really good vacations. You have any vacations planned this summer? I hope you do. I hope you're going to take some time off. But really, it doesn't matter how great the vacations are. It doesn't matter maybe how many days you might take off of work. There's something really below the surface that has to happen. Our world is preoccupied with relaxing and vacationing. My favorite example of this is one of the master planned communities in our own metroplex. Actually, it's in our township. I may live there. And its marketing slogan, prior to COVID, they did a pretty good job of selling homes. Now, of course, they're pretty much sold out. But this was the marketing slogan on the billboard near my house: be happy in your habitat. This is the only place where you can park it at home, where you can find balance while falling head over heels. Are you all ready to move to my neighborhood? This is the only place where trailing puts you ahead. They're scratching the surface of something that's really deep within all of us. That's what good marketing does, isn't it? But what's the itch? The itch is we are longing for rest. We are longing for a more sacred pace. And master plan communities know this. I went out and visited Dean Moyer at his new master plan community. And so now you don't just need 4 walls, but you need like an infinity pool that everyone can go to, and walking trails and hiking trails, and a community sort of concert. We're longing for a more restful pace. It's telling us something about us and our culture, really, when you look at how we're trying to do life and what is it that sells in this current moment. They're scratching the surface of something really deep, but no matter how well manicured the lawn is, no matter how great the hiking trails may be, there's something that has to go deeper. And after calling and naming the 12, Jesus now goes on to give them several parables of the kingdom. And I want you to know the way that real restfulness will occur is it has to get below the surface of your life. It has to get below the action and activities of your life. You may very much need a day or a week off. But more than that, you need to allow and invite the kingdom of God to get below the surface of the activity. And this is what this kingdom parable begins to teach us. Now, just the context for a moment, what's just happened over the last chapter or 2 is there's been significant rejection of the person and work of Jesus Christ. The very people that you thought would be sort of open to his ministry and leadership actually reject him. So who are those people? Well, it's the religious leaders that reject Jesus, and it's his own family. And on the hills of calling the 12, this new community to be his people, he's just experienced rejection from his family and from the religious leaders. Not only has there been rejection, but just before he tells these parables, there's also been a sense of sort of false momentum. Huge crowds were gathering. So much so that he had to get into a boat just to teach them. Huge crowds. Okay, so rejection of religious leaders and family and sort of false momentum. And Jesus sort of calls a timeout, goes up on the mountainside and says, 12, I want to teach you something about my kingdom. It's really different than what you're currently observing. It's going to come in a really different way. He wants to teach them the sacred pace of the kingdom of God, and they didn't initially get it, and neither do you and I. And so let's look at that first parable. Let me just read it. The kingdom of God is as if a farmer, should scatter seed on the ground. He sleeps and he rises night and day. The seed sprouts and grows, he knows not how. The earth produces by itself. The word there is it's automatic. It happens automatically. First the blade, then the ear, then the full grain of ear. See, there's really nothing more simple or ordinary for you and I as modern hearers. We have to remind ourselves there's nothing more simple or ordinary or necessary than planting a seed that will produce some grain or some food that you could consume. It's very ordinary action, right? It's very necessary. This basic thing that would have been a part of every first century household's rhythm, Jesus uses to say, I want to teach you something about my kingdom. He takes this example from ordinary human life. This is revealing a truth about God's kingdom. He's wanting you and I to understand something about the ordinary activities of our days. The farmer sows. What a simple action. He just scatters seed. He plants. And this farmer, Jesus says, understands. This is a person who understands something about God's kingdom that the rest of the world doesn't know. What's the very next action that's explained in this passage from this farmer? They sow, this farmer sows, and then what happens? He goes to sleep. This is the only time this parable is mentioned in all 4. Mark's the only one that tells it. So as I talk about this parable, you go, oh, we talked about that sower seed parable. No, this is a unique one. This one's only told by Mark. And Jesus wants us to have ears to hear, eyes to see what he's saying. Now, it's lost on modern hearers because if you're like me, you might have thought that, being a farmer sounds kind of quaint and peaceful. But I need you to think of other sort of antonyms. It's actually an oxymoron to talk about a restful farmer. It would be kind of the equivalent, not to pick on anyone, but of saying a restful mother of 3 all under the age of 6. A restful attorney, a restful physician. It's as crazy as talking about a restful pastor. A restful farmer. Do you know how much is outside of the control of a farmer? I mean, my little brother, as I bragged about occasionally, he's actually a farmer. It sounds better to say, he's a grape grower, winemaker, but he's a farmer. That's what he does. And it's interesting. This is before the day of automatic drip irrigation and greenhouses. And so everything is outside of the control of the person Jesus is talking about. There's either too much rain or too little rain, too much heat or not enough heat. The pest, disease. There is so much that could go wrong in the life and vocation of a farmer. And Jesus says that this is the one, this type of person, understands a reality that I want you, my 12 disciples, to wake up to and to be alive to, which is the reality that I've asked you to sow, I've asked you to work. Yes, indeed we have work to do, but we do it from a place of restfulness. Now, what kind of farmer would sleep well at night, given all that's outside of their control? Where would that restfulness come from? I don't think it's a good insurance policy. This is before that time frame. He's describing a person in the kingdom that understands that God is responsible not only for the growth, but that God in his goodness and competency has all of creation under his care. It's the kind of person who understands what God is responsible for versus what I'm responsible for. This is the kind of farmer that sleeps well at night. I'm going to ask it in a few questions and spend the next few minutes really just trying to apply this simple parable to our ordinary day-to-day lives. Do you trust in the goodness and competency of our Lord? Where are you currently anxious? To get back to the main point of this series about a sacred pace, discovering how to really keep in step with Jesus Christ, let me ask it this way. Where are you currently experiencing hurry or worry? What's causing you to feel anxious? When I look at my own life, most of the time where I'm most prone to hurry and hustle are the areas that I kind of feel like I need to grab hold and influence and to control certain outcomes or certain goals. But listen to the parable of the restful farmer. And there's these three things. The first one's already up. Would you entrust your ordinary life to the goodness and competency of our Lord, our God? Your ordinary life. Now, I know it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but let me just say one more time. God's not inviting you to be faithful or to figure life out by just getting out of the circumstances that you're currently in. We often do this. As we're young, as we're coming, as we're growing in our faith, we'll often think, what I really need is God just get me out of these circumstances. Life is like a coat that never seems to fit, if you've ever heard that. And so often what we'll do is where's the ejection button? I don't like what I'm feeling. Where do I find that button? What God invites us to, where you'll get restful, is saying, not God, get me out of this, but God, would you come into this mess? So would you invite God into the ordinary challenges that you are facing right now? Where does his provision seem short? Where does his competency seem maybe not enough for you? He's inviting you in that place, in that very place, to entrust it to his care, his competency, his concern. One of my favorite quotes in my whole life on this is from Dallas Willard. It's a bit long. I'll read it quickly. Actually, I won't. I'll read it restfully. We must accept the circumstances that we constantly find ourselves in as the place of God's kingdom and blessing. You see, the farmer knows, pause, don't read the rest of the quote. The farmer knows God cares about the sowing of the seed. God cares about the rain. God cares about the ordinary struggles of my day. Oh, I want my daughter and son to know this. That the ordinary life that is right in front of them, that's the raw materials that God wants to work with to make his presence, goodness, and competency known to us. Willard goes on to say, God is yet to bless anyone except where they actually are. And if we faithlessly discard situation after situation as not being right, we will simply have no place to receive his kingdom into our life. We're not trying to get into a position to avoid trials. We're to see every event as an occasion. This is the beauty. What a great quote from Willard. The beauty of this is the occasion in which the competency and faithfulness of God will be confirmed to us. This is the place for you to entrust your everyday life to his care. Secondly, I want to say it means all of it, not part of it. Jesus had a way when people were with him, because he's the king, of putting his thumb right on the area, the one thing. You know, I'm okay with giving like 95% of my life to him, but there's always a section, a relationship. For me, it was my relationship with Jen early on, before we were married. What is it that you kind of want to go, God, you can have all of it, but this is the kind of the one thing. I want to tell you, some of us know what it is for you. If you don't, you could ask us. We could help you find it out. Because it's the thing that you're most prone to worry about and talk about. It's the thing that once you're in community, once you're with people, you'll see it in me, I'll see it in you, you'll begin to see, wow, this is really important to them. That one thing, that's the thing. It could be a career, it could be a reputation. For me, it was, sort of unconditional approval from those in authority over me, from my spouse eventually. What is it for you? You've got to entrust all of it. Christ is so competent and so good that if you'll ask him, he'll show you, God, where is it that I need to entrust? It's your whole self. It can't be part of you. I was listening and reading to a number of commentaries and pastors, not only on this passage, but really the whole book of Mark. And when you think about king and kingdom, it's not really a concept as modern readers and certainly as Americans that we're prone to consider. But how do you come to a king? How do you come to a king? You don't come sort of going, well, hey, now here's the deal. It's a little negotiation, right? We call it barguing in the Poppy household, where we're going to sort of bargain with the one in authority over what I get out of this. Like, look, if you ask me to clean my room, like, what am I going to get out of this deal, right? He's 11. It's normal from what I hear. We do this. This is not how you come to a king. You come to a king and everything is laid before that king. Interestingly enough, if you have a sword, you bend the knee and the sword blade pointed towards you, handle pointed towards the king. The one thing that you entrust for your own protection and your own security, you make yourself vulnerable to, and you give it to that king, and you make yourself vulnerable to their leadership, to their authority. And the way that you'll really know is you'll feel vulnerable doing it. That's why it's normally the one thing. There was one person that Jesus encountered, and it was his wealth. He was willing. The commandments Jesus says, he was willing to do all of it, but Jesus says, well, it's possessions for you. It's different sometimes. It's not always possessions for all of us. What is it for you? What's the one thing? God's asking you to entrust it to him. Now, before we get too far into this 5 or 6 week series, I have to say, this idea of the priority of witness. Last thing, and we'll close on this. So Jesus calls his 12 that they might be with him. And in our culture that is so hurried, so overbooked, so driven to work, I want at the outset of this series to make it a point to say that you'll have to learn to practice the priority of witness. It'll have to become sort of a daily, weekly practice. You guys know how much I enjoy C.S. Lewis, and in his book, Mere Christianity, he talks about this with the metaphor of coming in out of the wind. What a great way of thinking about this. That on a daily basis, and then on a weekly basis, followers of Christ have to learn to come in out of the wind of hurry and to begin to really be calmed down by the presence of God in the midst of our daily challenges and weekly responsibilities. And the primary way of being with is walking and conversing. And so no big surprise here, but the practice of daily prayer is so essential to witness. Conversing with God, learning to actually have a conversational relationship with God. It's only been as I've begun to teach my children how to pray that I'm learning how to pray. Because I've had to encourage Emery and Tucker, take the ordinary events of your day and put them before the Lord. And then I went, oh, have I done that today? Daily prayer, practicing the priority of witness. It happens through daily prayer. There's an app for that, by the way. Coming in out of the wind. Lewis writes in one moment, I won't read the whole quote, but down towards the middle, he says, at first we can only do this in moments. We struggle with it. We can only do it in moments. But from those moments, the new sort of life will be spreading through our system. Because now we are letting him work right at the right part of all of us. The difference between paint, which is merely laid on the surface, and a dye or stain, which soaks right through. The idea is you and I are actually being invaded by God's kingdom. The kingdom works its way into the soil of our own souls. And we begin to be present to him and with him and restful in the midst of extraordinary responsibilities at times. It's also a weekly habit. I'm not going to say a lot about it today, but just so you know where we're going in the series, it includes the practice of Sabbath. It includes the practice of ceasing activity on a regular basis. And it's really not fair for me not to talk about Sabbath in a modern culture, but I'm not going to delve into that today. We'll cover it during the series. Daily and weekly practices where we say, God, the priority of our life is not consumption, it's not entertainment, it's not just relaxation, but it's being present to you. It won't just happen. Witness won't just happen. Any of you have been married 20 years or longer? I'm almost there. You know. Witness does not just happen. What occurs naturally is drift away from one another. It takes priorities. It takes practicing the priority of witness. So we entrust our daily, regular, ordinary life. It's as simple as planting seeds and resting well. We entrust our ordinary life. We entrust all of it, and we practice the priority of witness. Now, I've applied it to us personally, but can I just ask us as a church, is this true of us as a people? Is it true that we are asking our Lord to teach us to walk and to live at a sacred pace? There's not a single church across our country that is not feeling the effects of a global pandemic over the last year. But for us, what's right in front of us is what we're called to be faithful and obedient with. And what's right in front of us is we moved locations. We uprooted in the middle of a pandemic. Are we moving along at a restful pace? Do we trust God's goodness and competency and care over us as a church as we get on the move? Here we are in this temporary gym, and I have experienced God's provision. I hope you have. But he asks us corporately. This isn't just a private invitation. This journey of witness, remember, he's calling 12 to be with him. He's calling a new community, the church, to be with him. And this priority of witness has to be guarded and protected by the whole community. Everyone has to make it a priority. Would you join us in that? Of prioritizing witness. We know the ultimate goal is not a destination, is it? The ultimate goal is witness, presence to him. And so, Father, before you, we entrust the cares and concerns of our daily life, both in our own homes and households, in jobs, in demands. But Lord, we also entrust the life that is right in front of us as Church of the Resurrection. Into your hands, O Lord, we commit the concerns and cares of this parish. And Lord, we trust you to do that which only you can do. We do want to see lives changed, people's hearts transformed. But God, that's your work. Here, we'll put our hands to the plow, we'll sow the seed, but Lord, teach us to be restful as we do that. We ask this in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.